Hi girls, and welcome back to another virtual troop meeting. Today we're going to be talking about astronomy. Now, if you would, tell me one thing you know about astronomy in the comments down below. Make sure to include your name, where you're watching from, and your troop number. I'd love to hear. So, to get us started, my name is Rachel Vara, and I am the STEM Program and Curriculum Coordinator for Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas. I live in Southwest Texas, more specifically in San Antonio. We start every virtual troop meeting the same way we would our in-person troop meetings, with the pledge and the promise. So let's get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let's move on to our promise. I've got a little sheet here to help us out if you don't remember. It's in English and in Espanol, so depending on which you'd like to do, you can start with us. So, on my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. So today, girls, we'll be working on some of the steps to earn your Space Science Badge. So depending on your level, you'll meet different steps. So if you're a Daisy, you'll have finished step 3, which is meet the stars. If you're a Brownie, you'll have finished step 4, which is be a stargazer. And if you're a Junior, if you complete our night sky scavenger hunt at the end, you will have finished step 3, discover the stars. So let's get started. So we started this video off saying it was going to be all about astronomy. So what is astronomy? Well, astronomy is the study of celestial objects. That could be moons, galaxies, planets, and stars. Now, stars are what we're going to highlight today, and more specifically, constellations. So has anyone heard of a constellation before? Maybe you've even seen one and you didn't even know it. Constellations are groupings of stars in the sky that form shapes. Now, officially, there are 88 constellations. This has been decided by the International Astronomical Union. They said that there are 88 distinct shapes in the sky. And some of these shapes go back thousands of years. Because think about it, before we had cell phones and TVs and tablets to distract us, and we didn't have electrical lights, at night it was very, very dark. So you could see all those little tiny stars in the sky, and you might even start to see certain shapes. Think about it as if you've ever kind of went outside on a cloudy and a sunny day and noticed that those clouds start to form shapes. Now, those shapes are just what you're seeing to make up from what you know. So maybe you see a house or a rabbit or even the trefoil sometimes, but those are not real shapes. They're just things that we're seeing and the shapes that the clouds are making. So that's the same thing when it comes to constellations. A lot of these constellations were named thousands of years ago, and I'm going to show you an example right here. Like our friend right here. This constellation was named thousands of years ago by a Greek astronomer named Ptolemy. Now, can anyone identify the name of this particular constellation? Make sure you comment down below. And if you said Orion, you would be correct. So it doesn't look like, right, it's hard to tell when the stars are kind of all over the place, but Orion is actually one of the most identifiable constellations in the sky. He's got a lot of bright stars in him, and he's easy to see by looking at his belt. This is Orion's belt right here. And he's identified, this is his bow, and he's sometimes pictured also with like a sword in his hand. The bow has also been identified as a shield, so over the years the picture looks different. But right now it's kind of just like a stick figure of something. It doesn't really look like it much. But what we're gonna do is make our own 3D constellations today, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the myth behind Orion, because the cool thing about constellations is that they were named to tell stories, and they evolved into myths. So there's usually a fun story behind every single one of those 88 constellations that we talked about before. So let's get prepped for our activity. The supplies you will need to start our 3D constellations are marshmallows. Now, if you don't have marshmallows, you could use Play-Doh or gummy bears or gumdrops or like those dots. Anything that you can kind of stick will work. Toothpicks or those party sticks. If you have skewers, that'll work too. You know, those long wooden skewers, you'll just have a really big 3D constellation. Or even dried spaghetti will also work. You're gonna need a writing utensil, a piece of paper, and our list of constellations that you should be able to find below. Now, on the constellation sheet, you can find Orion, but we also have our big Orion up here. So let's make our constellations out of our marshmallows and toothpicks. And we're gonna start with Orion because we're familiar with him. He is the most recognizable of all the constellations. So the first thing we're gonna do is take our toothpick and we're gonna form his belt, because his belt is the most identifiable part of him, so it's the easiest place to start. So we're gonna take a marshmallow and just kind of skewer it on there. And also, if you'd like to munch on some of your stars, that's okay, just make sure you ask your parents. But make sure you save yourself enough to do your Orion. So you should have what looks like 1, 2, 3. Got our 3 star marshmallows on here. And we're going to do his arm next, or his shoulder. So this is what we have here. So we're gonna start with his arm, his head, and then his shoulder, okay? So we're gonna take another toothpick and we're gonna plunk it in there. And then we're gonna grab another star into his other shoulder. And it doesn't really look like much right now, but we just keep going. And then we're gonna take another toothpick and point it into the other end of the belt, okay? And plop another star on there. It doesn't really matter the direction of your marshmallow. So this one's horizontal and this one's vertical. It doesn't really matter. It's your choice, it's your constellation. And we're going to make sure, so we've got his belt, his arm, and then we're gonna make another one up here. This one's gonna be kind of diagonal. So set it down here so it's easier. It's okay if it moves around, girls. So this is his head. And we're gonna take another toothpick. So it's starting to form somewhat of a shape. We've kind of got his head, his shoulders, and his belt. And we're gonna do his feet, or the bottom part of his constellation now. So grab another toothpick and another star. And we're gonna hook it in there. And then we're just gonna continue doing the same thing on one side, on the other. They're almost mirror images of each other. And then you're going to connect those 2 feet. So you should have something that looks like this. So it's starting to take place. Now if you want to, you can angle some of these because Orion is in a perfect rectangle. And we'll do his bow next. So you need 1. So we're going to hold it up and we're going to take it off his left shoulder, right in there. We're going to put 1 more here. for this one, we might need to break. We're gonna break our toothpick. So if you need help, ask an adult, but you should have 2 pieces like this now. And we're just gonna plop that one right in there. So it kind of looks like this. And then if you want to do it at an angle so it looks more like a bow, go for it. And voila! We have our 3D marshmallow Orion. So it should look just like our big Orion, if you can kind of see. Ta-da! And this one you can able to see it. You can hold it up if you'd like, kind of how it would be in the stars. And this one, it's a little easier to see. It's more identifiable because we have the lines. Those toothpicks are lines drawn. Now in the sky there are not lines drawn. It's just the stars, and you kind of have to use your imagination to fill in those lines. So what I want you to do next is choose one of the constellations from our sheet, and I want you to make that one. Test it out, and then we'll make our own. So I'm gonna make one. I'm gonna do, let's see. I think I'm gonna do Aries, the ram, because that's my zodiac sign, though astrology has nothing to do with astronomy. But I'm going to do Aries just in honor of my upcoming birthday. So you can choose whichever one. If you'd like to do Aries along with me, you're more than welcome. If you look on the sheet, all the red dots are where you're going to find those stars. So everywhere you see a red dot, you need to make sure you have a marshmallow or your star substitute. So place it here. And if you see some of them are closer together, you're more than welcome to, continue. If you need to break up some of your toothpicks, you can. And, well, it goes like this. Voila! I've got my Aries constellation. Now, Aries is a good example of how some of our constellations don't look exactly like the animal that they are supposed to represent. So Aries is the ram, but if you look, this doesn't really look like a ram at all. This could maybe be a leg, or this is the head, and then this is the body. So with our constellations, some of them you have to use your imagination with what they look like. So this is important to remember for when we create our own 3D constellation. So what I want you to do is, once you finish up, we're gonna create our very own constellation. Now it can be anything that's special to you. It can be your favorite pet, it could be an object, a particular shape that you like. I am going to do my cat Watson because he's here with me. And I'm gonna try and do it, and then we'll compare, okay? And remember, anytime you finish, take a picture of your constellations and post it in the comments below, because I'd love to see what you guys came up with. And then we'll move on to our next step. So I'm gonna go and make Watson. You finish up your constellation, make your own constellation, and we'll check back in just a second. Okay, welcome back, girls. So, I just finished my constellation. This is Watson the Great. Now, with our constellations, a lot of them get their names from myths. So, our friend Orion here is actually based on a Greek myth. And there are quite a few different stories about him and how he ended up in the stars. But I'll share one with you. So Orion is the hunter. He has his bow and is usually represented with his club or his sword. And as a hunter, he boasted that he could defeat any animal, that no animal could defeat him. He was the world's greatest hunter. Well, this angered the earth goddess, and she sent a giant scorpion, or more like Scorpio, if you're familiar with the constellations. And the scorpion and Orion battled it out. Unfortunately, Orion could not defeat the scorpion, and he lost. Now Zeus, who is the king of all the gods and was in charge of Olympus, was very entertained by this particular battle. And what he did was he honored the scorpion by placing him in the stars, and it became the constellation Scorpius. Now, Artemis, who is the goddess of the hunt, and remember Orion was a hunter, and she was very proud of him, and she pleaded with Zeus, please, 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 can he also be honored in the same way? And Zeus, entertained, said, of course. And so he placed Orion in the stars. Now, if you look at a star chart, which we'll talk about in part 2, Orion and Scorpius are actually across from each other in the sky. So they're on opposite ends, and as the Earth moves, it looks like Scorpius is still chasing Orion to this very day. So one of the lessons behind this myth, because myths are usually to teach people a lesson to be better for themselves, this lesson about Orion was that you shouldn't be boastful, and that you should be very humble about your gifts, and you know, be a nicer person, be kind to all animals. So those are just some of the things. Now, we heard Orion's story, and what I want you to do is write down your own myth or story about the constellation you just created. So since mine is in honor of Watson, I'm going to write a fun myth or story about him, and I want you to do the same thing at home. So I'm gonna get started, and then we'll share our stories, okay? See you in a sec. Okay, girls, do you have your stories? So, I have my story about Watson, the great constellation. So Watson, the great cat, was very fond of chasing butterflies. And one day he followed too close to the beautiful monarch, and he followed her, and he leapt so high that he missed, and he ended up in the stars. So my story was very short, but you can go as long with your story as you'd like. It can be something really silly or kind of fun, or if you want to teach a lesson, maybe you want to talk about one of the elements of the Girl Scout law or promise in your story. It's all totally up to you. I want you to use your imagination and make sure to share it with us. I'd love to hear everything that you come up with. You girls are so smart, and I know you're gonna have some great stories for me. And those are all our constellations. Okay, girls, so that finishes today's activity, but I have a challenge for you. So what I want you to do is tonight, when it gets dark outside, I want you to go outside and try and take your list of constellations and see if you can find any in the sky. Orion is going to be pretty prominent right now. He's a winter constellation, meaning he's usually in the sky. And since we're kind of on the cusp of winter and spring, you should still be able to find him. Remember, look for his 3 belt stars and you should be able to find him. Or if you can find Ursa Major, which houses the Big Dipper, because the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper actually are not constellations. They are part of a larger constellation called Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. So I'd like you to go and try and see if you can go on a night sky scavenger hunt and see if you can find any of the ones we talked about today. Or if you can create your own by looking at the stars. Now, if you live in a city like me, where there's a lot of light pollution and you can't really see the stars that brightly, you can always go on your phone or have your parents download a night sky app. So there's lots of different ones out there. Any of them will do really great. Just be careful, because some of them do have in-app purchases, and you don't want to do that. These just use the free versions. And what you can do is take your cell phone and hold it up to the night sky, and it can show you what should be there. It'll usually highlight the constellations. Sometimes it'll tell you if there are planets out. It even works during the daytime too, so if your bedtime is before it gets dark, you can always use your app to kind of see in the daylight where in the sky those constellations would be at this particular time of day or night. And make sure you tell us what you find. I'd love to see any pictures of you searching. I know it's dark, so Flash could be your best friend. But make sure, don't forget to share your constellations and your wonderful stories. And I hope you had fun today, girls. So to end our virtual troop meeting, we're going to do, since we can't do a friendship circle, we're gonna practice social distancing. And also I'm here just by myself. We're gonna sing the Make New Friends song. So are you all ready? Okay, let's go. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. A circle is round, it has no end. That's how long I want to be your friend. Yay! See you next time, girls.